And we begin in the United States, where millions of people have voted in crucial US midterm polls. One of the key results so far is that the Democrats have managed to flip the closely contested Senate seat in Pennsylvania. John Fetterman, Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor, has defeated Republican Mehmet Oz, a celebrity doctor. He had the backing of former President Donald Trump. That boosts Democratic chances of retaining the wafer-thin majority in the Senate.
God bless you all. I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do, and we had that conversation across every one of those counties. And tonight, that's why I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
US networks are projecting that Donald Trump ally Doug Mastriano has won the governor race in Pennsylvania. The 58-year-old, who has been a 2020 election result denier, was up against Democratic candidate Josh Shapiro. Democrat Kathy Hochul has made history by becoming the first woman to be elected as governor of New York. She's projected to defeat Republican contender Lee Zeldin there.
I'm not here to make history. I'm here to make a difference. And because of all of you, we'll keep making progress, breaking down barriers, breaking glass ceilings, helping New Yorkers achieve the greatness that it is capable of.
But her challenger did not concede.
We're still totally committed towards seeing it through. For the 1.4 million Election Day voters who have not yet had their vote cast and counted, we hope that as these results come in, that we'll be able to prevail.
Florida, it appears, is seeing a red wave. The incumbent Florida governor has managed to hold on to his post. Ron DeSantis is tipped as a potential candidate for the 2024 presidential election.
While our country flounders due to failed leadership in Washington, Florida is on the right track. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
Do whatever it takes. That's my commitment to you.
Florida Senator Mark Rubio made his victory speech after the incumbent beat Val Demings.
I am more energized and excited about working in the Senate than I've been at any other time because I believe we are on the cusp of a new generation of leadership in this Republican Party that will restore common sense.
Donald Trump's former White House spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been elected as Arkansas governor. She becomes the state's first woman to serve in that post.
Thank you so much to the people of Arkansas who've entrusted this responsibility to me. I will be forever grateful to each of you, and I promise I won't let you down. I will never, ever forget who and what we are fighting for, because I have three little reminders, Scarlett, Huck, and George, who are going to hold me accountable and remind me that every single decision I make as governor will have a direct impact on their life and the life of every kid in Arkansas. That is not at all something I take lightly, but it is something I know I'm ready to take on. I look forward to being Arkansas's very best governor for the next 8 years. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless our great state. Thank you.
In Massachusetts, Democrat Mara Healey has been elected as governor. Healey is the state's first woman in the role and the first openly gay candidate elected to that office.
To
of you and to all of you out there, with the help of so many, we made history, didn't we? We made history. We did. I stand before you tonight proud to be the first woman and the first gay person ever elected governor of Massachusetts.
Well, for more, let's talk now to Aaron Singh, the former Indian ambassador to the United States, who's joining me live now from London. What do you make of these results so far? It's not necessarily quite the red wave that some Republicans were expecting.
I think several trends have emerged following whatever results we've seen so far. One, as you mentioned, the red wave that everybody was talking about, and that the Republicans, especially Trump Republicans, are doing very well, that has not been borne out. Now, still the likelihood seems to be that the Republicans may be able to flip the House. And if that happens, then governance for the Democratic President Joe Biden in the next 2 years will get more complicated, especially in terms of the legislative support that he need on certain issues. And the Republicans will try to keep him under pressure through various kinds of hearings, investigations, and perhaps even, going through the pro forma of an impeachment process, which is something that they've talked about. But the kind of majority that they were talking about in the House, that doesn't seem likely. So I think what that has indicated is that despite whatever was projected in the public opinion polls, the negative orientation towards President Biden has not been as deep as many had projected. And the support for Trump also, although strong in sections of the Republican Party, has not been as deep as had been projected earlier. Therefore, going ahead, one can expect that following this, President Biden would not be weakened as much as was anticipated earlier, and his candidature for 2024 would probably remain online. As far as President Trump is concerned, I think one can expect that there may be rivals within the party now emerging to challenge his nomination for president in 2024. And one of the persons being talked about is Ron DeSantis, and you played his clip just now, who has been re-elected as governor of Florida, and is seen as a rising person within the Republican fold. So I think after these results, there will be in both parties, Republican and Democratic, search going on for path forward. Republicans will need to see whether they need to tone down the message that was coming from people who identified as Trump Republicans, more extremist messages, more polarizing messages, and they want to move a little bit more towards the middle ground, as Mark Rubio suggested in his comments, as Ron DeSantis has been suggesting, distancing himself somewhat from President Trump. And on the Democratic side also, we'll have to assess that following the election, what is the strength of those that were seen as the progressive Democrats, pushing for more non-mainstream Democratic Party policies, more welfare-oriented policies, and to what extent they will go for the center. So it's summing up, one can say that the Democratic position has been hit a bit, but not as much as was feared. And as many have pointed out, the loss for the president in terms of support in the Congress would be less than what President Bush had seen after he had been elected, or what President Clinton had seen in the midterms after he had been elected. So to some extent, therefore, President Biden has been able to hold his ground. But yes, certainly governance in the coming period would be a little more complicated for him.
And how much disruption and controversy do you expect in the next 24 hours and beyond about the issue of election integrity and some of those claims that some of the candidates have been making, often without any evidence at all, about the integrity of some of the votes in US states?
I think that will probably continue because, as you know, that has been a major plank of President Trump and those who are seen as the Trump Republicans. And it is more oriented towards the fact that the mainstream white population in the United States has seen its numbers in proportion decrease compared to the minority groups, the African American, the Latin community, those coming from Asia. And therefore, over time, its percentage share of population is decreasing. And therefore, there is a fear that this segment of the population would have to share power more with the immigrant groups coming in and, of course, the African American community. So this is really a pushback against that and trying to find some ways of restricting voting so that their share in the voting population is not reduced by as much as their share in the overall population, and they can hold on to the levels of power. So I think this will continue. But as most analysis has shown and most judicial assessments have shown, that there is not much reality or truth behind these claims. But there is, in large part, a significant part of the Republican voters in the US tend to believe that, at least so far. But then they've also made some gains. Now, how do they square that with the fact that although they say that there is no election integrity, but then they have made gains and many of the leading candidates have been re-elected. So it's more a political position, but I think perhaps in the face of reality and truths over time, it will fade away.
And if I can just take you back to your former role, what do you think embassies in Washington are going to be reporting back to capitals around the world in terms of their assessment about what these results mean for foreign affairs, international affairs, and the United States' role on the world stage, particularly when it comes to Ukraine?
As you rightly observed, I think every embassy and every ambassador or diplomat will be trying to assess what do the results mean in terms of the interests of their own countries. And I think as far as India is concerned, there's now been a broad bipartisan support for the India relationship, both among Republicans and Democrats. Since the time, of 2000, when President Clinton started the process of building a new relationship with India. And it was taken forward by both Republican and Democratic presidents. President Clinton, President Obama, and now President Biden as Democrats. President Bush and President Trump, even during President Trump, the relationship had consolidated as Republicans. And even in Congress, there's a broad bipartisan support for the India relationship. So I think that continues. Now, in terms of issues of interest to India, I think on Russia, for example, where there's a difference of opinion between India and the US, one can expect that the present US posture will continue. President Trump was seen as somewhat more friendly towards Russia, but many in the Republican Party have a hawkish position on Russia. And the Democrats have taken a certain position related to what has happened in Ukraine since February this year. So given that, I think on Russia, the US position is not likely to change. And therefore, that's something that we have to manage. And so far, I think the signal from the US has been that despite the differences with India, on Russia, they value the India relationship and understand India's compulsions. The US Secretary of State had said on many occasions that India's relations with Russia developed at a time when US was not willing to be that kind of partner. And the National Security Advisor said that with India, we are playing the long game. And then you've seen some recent statements coming from the US indicating that on the controversy related to a price cap on purchase of Russian oil, the US is not expecting India to stop purchasing Russian oil because they expect the oil to be available in the market to keep the overall prices down. So there is a signaling that they understand India's compulsion. Similarly, related to China, which is again a major issue for US and for India, where there's some convergence in the concerns that both countries have related to China's increasing assertive behavior in the international context. You see that in East China Sea, South China Sea, of course, along the line of actual control. And there again, both among Republicans and Democrats, there is a broad consensus in the US that there needs to be a pushback on China's illegal claims in the international context and their predatory trade and economic practices. And the Quad framework, where India, US, Australia, and Japan have been working together, that has been given a pride of place in US international strategy at the moment, in terms of the Indo-Pacific strategy, in terms of their dealing with the response from China. I think, therefore, the signal from the US is that they value the India relationship. So I would expect that the relationship with India will remain on track, and there will be a reinforced effort to deepen the economic and technology partnership. You would have seen that the US Secretary of the Treasury was in India just a few days ago.
Arun Singh, India's former ambassador to the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you.